If you want to contact people in the future, if you want to reach out and make your name known, you need to do it by being on the web. And the other nice thing about the web, of course, is it's very egalitarian. Anybody can do this. It's cheap. It's really easy to create a website. You go to Google and you can create a blog for free. You could do this right after you leave this lecture. Trivial stuff. The thing is that most scientists don't do this. Okay, that's kind of okay, because everyone's got different interests. We're not going to try and force everybody in the mold of, well, you've got to be blogging like P.Z. Myers, or you're a failure as a scientist. No, that's not the case. Okay. But we do want to emphasize that there is an important medium here that we should be exploiting. And so far we're doing fairly well. We do better than the creationists at using the web. And I'll just throw out some numbers here for you. This is some a simple little experiment I did. Imagine that you're looking for something about evolution, and you might think, well, let's type into Google evolution, and let's mention some name that we know something about, the Grants or Kingsley, like I just mentioned. Throw in a name and ask, okay, how many hits do you get turning up? How many people have heard of this guy? How much accessible information is about them? So I tried this with a few names. So the number of Google hits returned by a search for name plus evolution. The first name I threw in there, because I'm an arrogant egotist, was my own, of course. And there, yeah, if you put my name in there and you ask about evolution, there's a ton of stuff. Was that 112,500 links that you can get to from Google, all going to stuff with me babbling about evolution, which is okay, that's nice. We would like to see more sources than me, of course. And then what I did is, I'm interested in evolutionary developmental biology, so I thought, oh, well, let's throw in a name of somebody I know fairly well who does great work I'm really impressed with. So I threw in Rudy Raff's name and asked him, there he is. Seriously, if you compare the academic status of Rudy Raff and P.Z. Myers, those should be kind of reversed. Google does not reflect the academic attainments of people out there, because Rudy Raff is too busy doing science to type things into his blog every day, which is, again, another reason you don't want everybody to do blogging. I also, for comparison, I selected a couple of institutions, and I went through their faculty biology list, and I typed in their names to get the average biologist. And yeah, we suck. Most of us aren't reaching out that well. So I thought, well, these are people nobody's heard of, out there in the general public. So let's go to Nobel Prize winners. So there's Nusslein, Volhard, Wieschaus, and Lewis, who won the Nobel Prize in Developmental Biology several years ago. It turns out that winning a Nobel Prize makes you about 1/10 as good as I am. In terms of this metric, of course. So if you don't want to write a blog, the other solution to get a little bit of notoriety on the web is win a Nobel Prize. You tell me which is easier. I know which one I found. Then I looked at a couple of people who do have some mention on the web. And for instance, one I'll talk about in a little more detail is Joe Thornton. He's a biologist at the University of Oregon. And he's more notorious on the internet than Nobel Prize winners. And I'll explain a little bit about how that happened. I looked at a couple of other people who have really good outreach skills. Sean Carroll, another developmental biologist at the University of Wisconsin, who's written a whole bunch of books, and I recommend everyone go get his books and read them because they're excellent. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, I have no power. Okay, well, I'll let the technical people figure this out. Oh, it is not plugged in here. There, okay. We're back in business. I have no fears. There we are, okay. Okay, so as I said, I went through a couple of people here. Yeah, so Joe Thornton is really good. Sean Carroll has written a number of books. Endless Forms Most Beautiful is a book I use all the time in my developmental biology courses. It's such a clear explanation of evolution and development. Jerry Coyne, some of you may have heard of, he is maintaining a blog, and it turns out maintaining a blog does wonders for your internet reputation. He's really shot up there fast. And anybody who knows this field knows that he's one of the big guys in speciation. So He's got serious academic chops as well, and is putting out a blog where he writes posts maybe every day, and it's been extremely popular and it's making him well known. However, to put this all into context, I typed one other name plus evolution, and this person gives you 2,790,000 hits, so you know, I had to put that little cut across there just so that it wouldn't diminish me too much. And that name is Paris Hilton. So we still have a ways to go in figuring out how to tap into popularity out there. And so I'm thinking, yeah, there may be a P.Z. Myers sex tape coming out any day now. Although I'm afraid if I did, my little bar there would go plummeting down really fast. So, you know, there's lots of room to expand, but I'm trying to make the case that, yeah, getting out there on the web makes you known to not just the scientists whose esteem and reputation we need in order to succeed in our careers, but also in people out there all around the world. And that's why people should be doing things like writing blogs, or, you know, an easy thing is having a page on Facebook. Famous scientist with a page on Facebook, yeah, you'll get lots of friends really fast. People will want to follow what you're doing. So what should you use a website for? I would say that there's a couple of goals here and things like writing a blog. One thing is simply translating. Everyone knows this. When you write a science paper, it is extremely dry. It's something you chop down to something tiny that will fit in Nature's publication requirements, which are very restrictive. And you know, you do things like you throw out adjectives, you throw out adverbs, you use the same verb over and over and over again. It's very dry, it's very distilled down. And it's the kind of stuff that's great for other scientists, because when you read a science paper, you don't want to fuss around with literary style. You want to get to the meat of the matter. You want to know how they do this, what results did they get, what are their numbers like. So you get through that really fast. But for the general public, they hate it. They will not read it. Again, I teach introductory biology, and it's a real struggle to get students, freshman students, to be able to read a scientific paper. They will stare at it in dumbfounded astonishment, and they have a terrible time working their way through it. Eventually they'll catch on, but it's hard to catch on in this very dry format. So what you have to do is you have to translate. And it turns out that's not so hard. I do it all the time. You get some really cool paper out there in your field, which you can absorb, you know, on just a glance. You can just skim through this really fast and go, oh, well, this is the main result. Here's the interesting stuff that this implies. This is what the interesting research in the future will be. And what you do is you write that up in plain English or plain Norwegian and put it on the web, and it will be popular. It's astonishingly popular. People love this stuff, finally having something accessible that can translate that stuff. The other thing that makes websites very popular is interaction. It was mentioned in my little introduction. You know, when I write something, I get hundreds of comments, sometimes thousands of comments, and people, you know, making all kinds of useful suggestions, like what I can do with myself and so forth. And also commenting on the work. And that's another thing that people love about this, is that they can have a conversation with the scientists. They can get the information back from them, and then they can ask questions. And they can reply back. Or also, it's not necessarily the guy writing the story that's replying back, it's somebody else in the comments. You get these conversations going on. And that's powerful stuff for bringing readers in and getting them to look at it. And then, of course, the other thing is that we humanize it. When you look at the stereotype of scientists